All right, hello and welcome to Digital Marketing Masterclass. We have a very, very exciting show for you today. As always, I have my co-host, our VP of Partner Growth, Todd Smith. Todd, welcome to the show.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right, today we're talking about the value of quality content in a crowded space. And what I mean by that is that I'm keenly aware that there's a lot of industries, I wouldn't call them sleepy industries, but what I would say is that there are certain industries out there that content marketing and SEO and all that stuff, you know what, it hasn't really penetrated it. And so you can use tactics of yesterday and still be pretty effective there. But then there's other industries, and those other industries are literally as competitive as can be. And you know, our space is one of them. And so if you don't have really great tactics, if you don't have a really great approach, if you don't have really great content, it's kind of like bringing a knife to a gunfight. And so what we wanted to do today was bring in a very special guest. We have Naz Urbina. Naz, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Chris, Todd, glad to be here.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. So we did a lot of pre-gaming before this show, and we're just kind of talking about Naz and his conference and his company and the fact that he hit 10,000 hours in marketing. What was this, Naz, like 25 years ago?
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't quite go that far, but I am rocking my third decade on living very much on the cutting edge.
Jeez. And so before we allow you to introduce yourself, I want to kind of go over some of the details that I know. You know, you're obviously the founder of Omnichannel X and Urbina Consulting. You work with a lot in omnichannel projects, especially in enterprise with pharma and tech and financial services. You're a regular speaker at things like Content Marketing Institute and other leading podcasts. And then you wrote your book. Is going on. How long ago did you write your book? 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, 2012. So we are coming up on our 10 years. We're looking at doing a second edition, but we're quite happy with it. It's actually, I think it's just hitting its stride now.
Awesome. So that's called The Content Strategy: Connect the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefits.
Correct.
So yeah, this is
great. I
mention
my co-author, Rahela and Bailey.
Oh, awesome. So above and beyond that, talk to us about the conference that you're putting on and when, give us all the details.
Right. So Omnichannel X is the conference. That's omnichannelx.digital as opposed to .com or .net. And Omnichannel X was born from my having spent a long time on the conference circuit as a speaker, also having organized other conferences in the past. And there was kind of a disconnect because we talk, and we're going to talk about this, I think it's very relevant to the topic we're discussing today, about what we're trying to accomplish. And for me, there was a disconnect with conferences that were organized by department and role. And I go to those conferences, I love those conferences, I speak at those conferences. But what I thought there was a gap for was a conference that was actually about the collective business problem. Like, what is the brand trying to do? Not what is necessarily the content marketer trying to do, or the product marketer trying to do, or the technical team trying to do, but what are we all trying to do? And that is come together around our audience to try to give them an excellent experience so we can develop a good long-term relationship with them. So can we have a conference that's about that? And that was really the challenge, to do something which was for the kind of the out-of-the-box thinkers who aren't zooming in on like their own careers and what being a better hyper specialist, but actually coming back and saying, how can I be a better team member? How can I be a better team leader and collaborator with the other teams in my brand, so that the whole operation moves forward better together? That's what Omnichannel X is all about.
That's great. And this isn't your first rodeo here. How many times is this? What year is this for your conference?
This will be the fourth coming up. It's June 13, 16. Our first one was physical. Now we have had 3 online in a row for obvious reasons. Hopefully next year we're going to go hybrid, which will be fun to make good on our name. But yeah, this will be our 4th year.
That's great. And so this one's completely virtual again. To our listeners, we kind of have a very special thing we're going to be doing at the end of the show, or at least it's going to be in the show details, where we are going to have 5 lucky listeners that if you just go to the link that's in the show notes, Naz has been generous enough to give out count them, 5 golden tickets to get full access to the entire conference. So we will have those details below. So very exciting. Do you kind of feel like Willy Wonka right now, Naz? Or
Yes, I love that's part of the best part of being a conference organizer is that Wonka feeling.
exactly. Yeah,
You get it.
exactly. 5 golden tickets. Yep. Awesome. So let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about content. Let's talk a little bit about omnichannel and things like that. So one of the things that I thought was just kind of interesting in some of the research that we were doing with you is that you talk a bit about how content is used to effectively not only communicate your brand and your messaging, but how you can structure it. You know what I mean? How to do what you're calling structured content, which we use in a little bit different way, but unpack how you use content just kind of like formulaically, and then how do you unpack that? When you were talking about structured content, we watched it on a YouTube video. I found it very interesting about all the facets that you were considering.
Right. Okay. So when we're talking about structuring content, the main goal is how can we make our content into a business asset that we can use and leverage like any other asset that our business acquires. Like when you have physical assets, you manage them properly. You don't go walk into a warehouse and ask the warehouse manager, like, how many items do we have in inventory? He goes, a bunch. How fresh are they? I don't know. I think we checked them a year ago or something. Like, it's just, you would never get away with the kind of madness that we get away with content with physical assets of a business. So it's that attitude of this is not just a one-off thing that I'm running for a campaign, or like I'm just putting stuff out there, which we get into the fire hose of publication. Coming back and saying, how do we grab these things, divorce them from a single campaign or a single purpose, and actually make them reusable across channels, across campaigns, across audiences, suitable for automation, so that they can be personalized, and so on and so on. And all that requires a little bit more planning, thought, and description of the information, so that people and machines understand what it is and what it's for, when to use it, who to give it to, what surfaces to display it on, and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the things that we've been saying for a long time is that, content marketing, just because of the sheer volume of it, for a lot of industries, it's just going to get tougher and tougher just because there's so much content out there. So it's no longer like good enough just to be like, oh yeah, we're going to write a blog and create content. And for us, it's a challenge to find those spaces in those industries where we can really get that content, like to what you just said, to become like an asset for the client. So what are you seeing on your side, kind of like from an industry perspective? Like, are there specific industries that are really, thriving with this trend? And then are there other industries that are sort of like not catching up?
So I find it depends really on the brand and the leadership, whether they get it. For me, I'll say something potentially controversial here, but that's why we're on a podcast. I kind of push the idea carefully and gently that content marketing is an expression of knowledge management. So the brands that understand that the people will be attracted to your brand if you have some useful knowledge for them.
Yep.
So this whole question of how do you differentiate yourself? How do you get into an industry where tons of players are all paying agencies? They're all, doing the keyword analysis. They're all got their SEO in line. How do you set yourself apart? You got to understand, what are your actual customers' goals? What are their, they could be, goals could be like, how do I spend my lunch hour? Or goals like, how do I properly transition into being a care worker for my mother who's, going to hospice? Like, it's goals, all sorts of goals, depending on what your brand is. Do you truly spend the time to understand them and find out what their needs are, and then target those with a laser focus?
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that we try to talk to our clients about is it's not necessarily like the best functioning or the best looking website wins. What we say is the most useful website wins, right? So that kind of, marries with what you're saying in the sense that really understanding, what your audience is or what your client's audience is and what questions they're asking. So we focus on this this concept of quasi, questions with answers and simple information, right? And then a lot of times what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically, figure out what questions your audience is asking, answer them quickly, maybe in like a video segment, and then give long form content to support that if they need more information, driving them further down the funnel. So I love when you say, because I kind of asked the industry question and then you completely deflected that. You said, it's really not about industry. It's kind of about leadership and understanding how valuable that content is as an asset. So you're talking my language with assets and liability. So thank you very much.
Can I jump in there with when you said about the questions, quasi? I love that quasi. And in terms of like what are brands that really get it doing differently? There's two things. So another one of my go-to phrases is that content marketing is marketing with its own value proposition. Okay. So,
all right, stop real quick. Let me slow down. Content marketing is really what?
Marketing with its own value proposition.
With its own value proposition. Okay.
So if I'm doing an
let's
ad,
do that.
Yeah. So if I'm doing an ad, if I'm doing a banner ad, that ad has zero value to you as an ad recipient. Right. So that's, traditional advertising marketing. The marketing thing, like if I see an ad in a newspaper, I see a billboard, that usually has zero or negative value. It has zero value to me, or it gets on my nerves. If I'm really lucky, maybe it'll give me some sort of off-ramp to something that actually does have value. Content marketing is the actual asset. When I get it, I go, this provided me something. The actual thing, if it's a white paper, if it's a blog, if it's tips, or if it's a tutorial video, the thing itself, the asset that you use to market with is independently valuable, regardless of if they ever move forward to actually purchase whatever it is you sell. So it's content marketing is when you market, but that asset, that marketing content actually is valuable independently on its own. So are you thinking about value? How do I transmit value with this? For me, that's the heart of content marketing, which is why I made that knowledge management connection as well. Where do we have something that's valuable? And to understand value, you must understand the questions people are going to ask in the order they're going to ask them.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
As opposed to shoving, like, here's all the stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the search engine. Go nuts. Here's all our. How are you surfacing the right stuff to me at my point in my journey? And have you understood me enough to be able to do that?
To be able to do that. And then like sort of the content funnel sort of flows that, like prompts almost the next question, right? So you're going to build that into the content, like for more information, click here, or, or here's a quick video. If you're probably wondering the same thing here, click here. So that's kind of interesting.
Exactly.
Now when you look at, that strategy, that makes sense to Chris and I, but is that a hard sell sometimes, like to a company?
Yeah, so the way that I sell that is, for me, my career has kind of been cut in half. And there's Naz's career pre-customer journey mapping and post-customer journey mapping. There's two words which I'm kind of trying to reclaim, and terms, I should say. Omnichannel, which tons of people have very weird understandings of what that even means. And so I hope we'll get to that in a second. And customer journey mapping. Your average customer journey map is a pretty pathetic thing. It's like you've got this line with maybe some bubbles coming off of it, and you're like, here I read an email, and here I talk to a salesperson, and then there's like the happiness line goes up and down, and maybe some notes below that. And I have literally been into clients where they have one of those done by a big agency, and they're paying like for every 3 inches of line on the PDF, they're paying like $50,000. And I get in there and then I'm like, so what are we, how are we climbing Mount Customer Centric? And they're like, well, we got this, We don't know what to do with it. We don't it doesn't tell us. There's nothing actionable in here. It's just this kind of poster that we put up in the in the main room with all the. So when we do customer journey mapping, we do what we were just talking about. So I sell the idea of coming together around the customer, regardless of channel. We don't customer journey websites or apps. You don't people's journeys don't happen on channel. They happen in real life. So we say, who is this person? How are they going to move towards their objective? Do we even know what their objective is? And then let's get everybody in the room. Let's have some cross-functional conversations about who knows. So I'll have marketing sit down with call center and go, what calls are you getting to the call center? And they go, well, people don't know how to do this, this, or this, or they don't want to buy because they don't understand this. And I'm like, have you ever spoken to these people? And the answer is usually no. So we get it's about having a department neutral understanding of the customer and the questions over time. And that, we're going to come together, we're going to understand the customer together, and we're going to see their questions over time and how to help them on their way. Everybody gets that. It's not a hard sell.
Yeah. That makes sense. How long does that process usually take with a customer? Like to actually map that out? Because we do something called a sales cycle analysis, which we can pretty much bang out in a couple hours and then develop it over a couple weeks. But what's that process look like for you?
We do
with the customer.
We're famous for being nerds, so we're very, very methodical, and so we will take as many inputs as we can. So we'll do several pre-interviews to kind of understand the lay of the land in that particular brand. Mm-hmm. Then we will kind of have the group sessions, and then we'll start to kind of whiteboard this at a high level, understanding the questions, understanding the opportunities to add value, understanding what the key metrics are, and then come back with the finished, let's say initial 1.0 map can be done. If the brand is really engaged, you can do it in a month. But the idea is that you want to be creating something which is a maintained piece of market research, not a paper. We're trying to get away from customer journey maps being a deliverable and being a new part of the business that they maintain on an ongoing basis.
So it becomes more dynamic, as things change, or Yeah,
exactly. So if you let's say we started with just the content marketers and go, we're going to look at search logs, we're going to look at contact us queries, and we're going to look at this, and then that's how we compile our journey. And we go, great, we're going to look at these three personas. Done. Then we want them to say, okay, then they go to talk to, or we facilitate it, the discussion with the call center, or the discussion with the salespeople, or the discussion with the training department. And that gives you layers of richness, which you add, a new understanding, which you add to that journey. And you might go, okay, this little box, which we thought was just turn it on, actually there's a whole thing they're going through. And so we can link to a sub-journey. And so you create this web of journeys which represents the full customer reality. So companies can go as far as they want with it. I give you a quick example: banks lost card. We lose our bank card, get a new bank card. That's actually one of the top 3 tasks that people go to their bank website for, is lost card. And there's so much difference between lost card, I lose my card in my house or something, and a mother loses her card while on vacation with her children in a foreign country. And so the brand will really spend a lot of time running different personas, different scenarios over the lost card journey, whereas other journeys will not be so important. You won't spend so much time on them.
Yeah, I go through that a lot with Chris, where I don't get the lost card. I get, I left my card in the car. Can you get lunch? That's a whole different journey.
That's a different journey with a different objective.
Different journey, but different objective. Yeah, but I fall for it every time, Nas. All right, Chris, you want to say a few things? I can see you chomping there.
Yeah, well, I think that Nas said they're famous for being nerds, and I was like, you know what? We have one of those in our company too. You know what? One of the things that we kind of see in our camp is that you go and you create really great content, and we want to make sure that the content brings value But then the client is so anxious to plug their product or service. And as soon as you get sales heavy in your own content, you lose so much of the, I don't know how to describe it, but like the emotion that's driven from really great content. If it feels too salesy, or if it feels like there's an agenda behind it, we have just seen it time and time again suffer because we just get too anxious. And it's pretty funny because I've started this agency 21 years ago, and there are times where, we have times where sales are so good for this company, and it's just like we get a new client, like it'll drown us. Like it's literally, that's how crazy it gets. And then there's other times where it's really dry, and you actually have to like tell yourself, like, you know what? Don't be desperate on this sales call because they can smell it, right? But when we create content, I've seen it so many times where people are like, you know what? You are dying to plug your company here, 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 and here. And I'm like, dude, you want this too much. You're going to ruin it.
Yeah. Well, you just made the transition there. I was actually going to do it, but you did it yourself, which is you made the transition between content that is too salesy and the sales call. Like, and that's what I was going to say. Like, just think about it. Think about the way you feel. Yeah. If you're talking to a salesperson and they're speaking to you like a human being, and they actually sound like they're listening, they actually sound like they're interested in finding you the right match between your need and whatever they're supplying, and a sales guy. Like that difference, you just get so turned off. We will all walk out of a store and come back later if we get that kind of salesperson on top of us. Content's exactly the same. You cross that line and you lost people. They're totally turned off.
Yep. And every time they've run the content up the hill, that's when it comes back down of, oh, you got to plug this and you got to plug this and you got to plug this. And so a lot of times our point of contact gets it. And then as soon as it gets run up the hill, they're like, hey, I'm not putting out, I'm just using a round number. I'm not going to put out 6K for this white paper and not even talk about our business. And I'm like, you know what? As it gets into the machine, like you have to understand that the things that we're building in like how you call structured content, the universe I'm building, this non-threatening piece matters more than ever.
It's the relationship play. And this, our kind of company mission and the conference mission are the same. We're trying to help organizations have the kind of relationships with people that people have with each other. Like, how the hell does a brand have a proper conversation? Remember who you are, adapt to your social cues, under like the different parts of itself, keeping them coordinated, developing the conversation over time. So it's hard for like 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people to conduct a conversation like that. But that's the kind of the meta mission. Yeah.
So I want to talk to you real quick. So I find a quote or two and annoy the crap out of my staff because I'll say it over and over and over again.
Yep.
And so the one for this
own it like it's yours.
I don't just like it's mine, exactly. So I am going to give credit to Barry Feldman here, but a week from now, I'll act like I made it up myself.
I'll tweak it.
But he says he's famous for saying the website, and I even say the marketing, is the mousetrap, but the content is the cheese. And what we find is that we'll have clients and they're so gung-ho about the mousetrap. And then when you start talking about the cheese, they think, well, oh, it's content. My guys can write that. I'm like,
it's not gonna happen. So I say something slightly different, and this is a big thing on the asset mentality. I talk about the rainbow and the pot of gold, and you've got all these bands of the rainbow. You've got all these channels. You've got your website, your phone, your watch, your inbound, outbound. So all these ways that people can come across the rainbow. But if they get to the pot, and instead of gold, they find sawdust. They don't. It doesn't matter how delightful you were and how wonderful your campaign. And you could be award winning with your campaign, but when you get to the thing, if the gold is not gold, they're going to feel ripped off and they're going to feel disappointed, and you're not going to build a positive relationship. And so that comes back to that thing with the content marketing having its own value proposition. Is it actually valuable, or have you painted up this beautiful journey for me to get to something where you leave me flat at the end of the story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. I think in the pre-show, I think it like resulted in like a double
Yeah, exactly. You can get a very pissed off customer. And for me, so, as an omnichannel guy, I see that all the time because I'll see this one department or one team. It doesn't have to be a whole department. It can be just like one team who's teeing it all up. So they're all about the rainbow, and then they throw it over the wall, and the other people let it drop on the ground.
Yeah.
There's just no. They're not looking at this from our job is to get this person to the goal. Our job is not to like get them excited to run. Like it's this siloing of KPIs. Like, are we actually lining up our objectives so that they get somewhere, or are we just saying, hey man, that's not my job. I'm responsible. I got to knock out the web pages. You got to worry about, I got to knock out the web design. You got to fill it with stuff. That's not my problem.
So I got another one, Todd, unless you got one.
Do you want to give a quote, or can I talk about his book for a second?
No, you go ahead. You talk about his book.
Okay, so you talked about this early in the conversation. Your book's going on 10 years old. 2012, I think, what the world was supposed to end. So that was kind of cool that you got that done before the world ended. But
right at the buzzer.
Right at the buzzer. You got it in. Great. No flaws were great. It could have. It could have saved the world. Thank you very much for all your effort. So
who knows?
The question that we have, since you both are older than me and you're kind of in your third decade of work, what does, like, in the 10 years, like, since that book's been written, I mean, obviously COVID's strange, but regardless of that, kind of keep that out of the conversation. Like, what changed in content marketing since you wrote that book? So it's a two-part question. What changed? And then when you do your second edition, what are some big shifts that our audience needs to know about, just so they can see, like, the big distinction between 2012 and 2022?
Yes. So it's been very interesting for me because I had a funny career. I got out of university, and just by dumb luck, I ended up in this company who was in 1999 talking about creating decoupled systems where content was a format neutral asset that could be used by machines and people on multiple channels. Like, that's where I was a kid.
99?
99.
That was like before the internet.
Not quite, but yeah. So we were in the web. I was there for the Web 1.0, Web 2.0 transition. Yeah. So so I've been there since the beginning.
Y2K.
Y2K. I was there for Y2K. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. So, I was in grade school, but yeah.
That's how. So I started my career in such a not beyond bleeding edge environment that I've kind of been watching the progress of the market from a very weird perspective. It's like I've been outside of it, watching it all kind of happen, going, I remember the first time I got out of that environment and started working on traditional websites and watching the way that we were copying and pasting from Word documents and then saving that as PDF, and then the PDF doesn't match the Word because the website got updated, and then the mobile website was like a whole different server. Like, watching all that insanity, going, what are you doing? So I think what's happened is that we were still trying to make the argument in 2012, the channels are going to keep coming. Mm-hmm. So in 2004, we first started talking about Web 2.0 and the rise of identity on the web, like transitioning from just web pages to being able to have users and feedback and communication and applications on the web. And
and communities.
And communities, exactly, and social proof, which is the oil that powers web industry. The ratings and feedback and reviews and stuff. So at that time period, every new thing that came out was still the last thing to the content marketer.
Right.
Yeah. So I can get on top of social, and now I have nothing else to learn as a content marketer. I can get on top of mobile web, and I have nothing else to learn as a content marketer. But I think that's kind of broken now. I think what I'm seeing is I'm hearing customers come to me with the word omnichannel and say, we need to stop doing everything on a one-off, one-channel basis and think about how this whole smorgasbord works together, because we cannot erect another team who takes the message and does it again for their channel in their own way, hopefully in some sort of coherence with the other channels. I think the brands have got the message that it's financially totally unsustainable. Like we work, we're blowing up in pharma, financial technologies. Like we work with some of the brands with the deepest pockets in the world, and they don't have, like, nobody has money to throw away. So I think they're starting to see that they were throwing away money, and that they were throwing away money for an inferior experience. It's being the multi-channel mentality of, I can do this on a phone, I can do it on the desktop, I can do it, via a kiosk or my TV, is not as powerful as if I participate with more touch points. I actually have a superior experience because they've been thought out to be additive. The channels actually contribute to each other. So if I do something on my phone, like little things, you see them all over the place now, like but they're still drip feeding in. Like I'll be on a form on my desktop and it says click to sign on your phone, and it pops up on my phone. I sign with my finger, I hit submit, and then it goes back to my desktop. Seamless multi-device experiences, which again, we're talking about when the book came out. But it's, so the underlying things haven't changed, but the industry understanding and acceptance of them, I think, is the biggest thing. People are starting to get it now, really get it.
So people are starting to adapt to these things that you talked about 10 years ago.
10 to 20, yeah.
Yeah, right. So 10 to 20, right? Is the challenge all right, so now that we've kind of got over adaptation, is the challenge now implementation?
Exactly. So content operations and the technical infrastructure. So when I say content operations, that means how do we work? How do we collaborate? Right. How do we make decisions? How do we measure those decisions? All that kind of governance and operational stuff, that's got to change. And then also we're just using terrible, inappropriate technologies, which don't integrate, which don't understand the content, which don't know how to, I don't want to get all techie, but like metadata, like tags. Is this for this person? Is this for that person? Is this part for early funnel or early adopters, or is it for highly educated, right about to purchase or post purchase? So all those are tags. And so if you have an entire ecosystem of tools and they don't share a common language, you cannot orchestrate your experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And then we use a HubSpot quite a bit, and a lot of things that they do are called user-based triggers. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of other companies that use similar. I think they might have made up that term on their own, but like, kind of follow me here is that not only have they developed a whole buyer's journey to maybe from awareness, consideration to decision level content to try to figure out where does all that play, but once users have actually, let's say hypothetically they signed up for a demo, like certain triggers should say, hey, you know what, this user signed up for a demo and it's a 10-day demo. They logged in on day 1 and then they never logged in again. And that should initiate content. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Or they've logged in and we know that they're this buyer persona. And if they don't get to these portions of the SaaS program, that's the hook. That's where we need them to be. And we can tell from the user experience or heat mapping and things like that they actually never got to the meat. And so that should also kick out marketing that's saying, look, these are 5 things that you don't know about our program. And so where I like about how you're kind of communicating is like, because we have a lot of SaaS clients, what I want to be able to do is the user experience and the technology, the SaaS experience that you have should also inform the content experience. But it's not like it's just a one-way funnel. The content experience should go back and inform the SaaS. You know what I mean? Like the actual software.
A company who kicks ass at that is Atlassian.
Oh, cool.
Atlassian is, so that's Trello and Confluence. So we've actually got 2 talks from Atlassian at the conference this year. They also spoke last year. And Cisco is also pretty brilliant. So Cisco, they were one of our keynote speakers at our first year conference in Amsterdam, and they just left the whole room like jaws on the floor because they have they said they have 800 rules. For when, if user does this and is in this location, then do that. It's all this intelligence where the machine can understand behavior and properly target content. And they walked us through, somebody posts on a forum, hey, does anybody know about routers? and then like nurturing that all the way through sending white papers to demo with social listening applications. And like there are companies who really, really, really do this. It's like they're flying and everybody else is on a bike. Coming back to your original comparison at the beginning of the episode, the companies who are putting all the puzzle pieces together can totally outclass the competition. And SaaS, Atlassian, Cisco, IBM does also some excellent stuff. A lot of the tech, either SaaS or hardware and software combinations.
You just said something that was really kind of interesting. Is like when you talk to people and you're talking about this concept, like do they see it as a puzzle? Like do they see it as like a system that's basically the goal of a puzzle is to complete it. You know what I mean? Like you got 1,000 pieces and you want to put this so you can see the whole picture. I love that analogy. Like do you struggle, or do you see that where you see people like not being able to see that? No, don't you get it? Like we can put all these puzzle pieces together and then you're going to get a clear view of the journey. You're going to get a clear view of the experience. And then you're going to find out where you need to go from there. Like, do you see that as a challenge or something that you have to overcome?
Yeah, and I will say, and I think it's a challenge, in our area, like as content people and content marketers and marketers, as well as brands in general. So there's the challenge of new mindsets. It's hard to walk into a room with people who've been doing this stuff, whatever they've been doing as long as we have, 20, 30 years.
Right, 3 decades.
And then you walk in there and then you go, we gotta change the paradigm. And they're like, no, we don't. What are you saying? I don't know the paradigm of my industry that I'm an expert in. So there is resistance sometimes to that when you walk in with truly new ideas and you go, we need to speak to, like I said earlier, I bet half the audience went, what? When I said, go speak to the call center. Like it's just like, it's this kind of an attitude thing of that's so different than anything I've ever done or heard of. And yeah, anytime you're introducing that kind of revolutionary change, you're going to get major pushback, but also simply it takes a while. Like for the penny to drop, you got to really work through examples. And one thing I found very powerful, I do this a lot in pharma, is we actually test content against specific content KPIs in isolation of channel. So we show people the content like in a Word document. No search, no branding, no logos, no colors, nothing. And then we check the content against key content metrics. So we say, okay, doctors are reading this to find out appropriate prescription guidelines. Patients are reading it to understand, adverse effects, but the common word is
SAEs.
Yeah. So side effects or symptoms and stuff like that. So they have a goal. They have questions they want answered, and we will actually do time to answer in seconds. And we'll test like content done one way, content structured another way, where we've structured it, labeled it, chunked it out, and made like into Lego pieces where we can reuse the right pieces for the right people. And then we present that the final thing that they see is just a Word document. And we say, find this answer in this document. And we can show that in the structured content that's been rewritten, they are able to get time to answer down by like 60%. And then we ask them, how confident are you that you found the right answer? And then we can get that going 30, 40% up. And because confidence, that advances people along the relationship cycle, either pre-sale or post-sale. If you make people confident, you are empowering them, and that builds strong relationships. And then finally, accuracy. Like you put out a white paper and you want people to get a certain message, and then you ask them a question and they can't answer it. So that's a major, major problem. Like you just failed completely. That whole thing, everything leading up to that paper was a waste of time, because what you wanted to get out of it, they couldn't get out of it. So isolating that and going, are the words written in a well-structured way? Are you doing your headings properly? Can you navigate this piece of content so that it operates, delivers the value? And then can you measure that? And when you put that up before and afters and you show like percentage changes, people freak out. And that really, really makes people go, oh, it's not just tapping on the keys and hitting save. There's some science to this.
one of the things you were talking about at Omnichannel, then we started to get into this, but I wanted to circle back on is that one of the phenomenons that we are seeing time and time again is we start to think about, hey, what kind of offers can we create? What kind of materials can we create that are consumable and link worthy? And obviously, there's a couple different factors that make content link worthy. Andy Crestodine is pretty famous for the two of them. Do you know Andy, by the way? Super guy. Orbit Media.
No, not personally, no.
Awesome. And he talks about saying like internal research is one of the number one factors, and then strong opinion. You know what I mean? Strong opinion, not everybody really wants to go out on that branch. And so you do have in your control is strong internal research. But what Todd and I are seeing, because we often go on sales calls together, companies go and they collect tons and tons of data. Then they go and they do a content strategy, and their content really doesn't share the actual gold. I'm trying to use your analogy with the rainbow. And you know what? 9 times out of 10 is that the best content that you can do is from the data that you actually collect. Because so many companies want to know, like, is what I'm doing normal? And they're buying your products and services, right, to make a better outcome. But in the back of their mind, they're trying to say, am I normal? And so here's one of the things that's interesting. So we have one client, they're a drone security company. It's like the coolest thing ever. They put drones up in the air, and they literally, like, say you're like FedEx or something like that. They know your whole surface area, and they have drones in the air, and they have these drone dogs. And what happens here is that if someone intrudes, literally the drone finds you and the dog finds you. It's insane. It's nothing like you've ever seen before. And you know what? Like, it's cool to say, this is what's cool stuff about my drones, or this is cool stuff about my dogs. But do you know what? What they really want to know is, hey, what did we learn from 130,000 hours of drone security? All right? Because that's what they want to know, is they want to say, hey, you have ability to see things that we've never seen before. What did you see? And if I'm if I'm an SMB, that security is a big deal, what should an SMB know about all those hours that you've recorded, or a midsize, or a pharmaceutical company? You know what I mean? And so, like, you collected all that data, and then you started talking about things that aren't, like, you know what I mean, are very different from all that data that you collected. And I'm like, you know what? The best thing you should do as a company is know that after you built your company a year from now, that the aggregation of your data is the stories that you should be telling with your content. I'm sorry, as you can see, I'm kind of excited about this.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. So I'm totally with you. So it makes me think of a few things. Makes me come back to that bit where we're talking about a little bit about the tech stack, and it's a very good example of what I mean. But in the text, it's not just swap out that tool for that tool. It's not like, oh, we have the wrong CMS. It can be that too, but you're making a point. Like, if you have multiple systems, if they don't all speak the same language, as it were, like if you're not categorizing your data in a like for like way, you can't do omnichannel analytics. You can't understand that this data from this channel and this data from this channel correlates. I've had companies literally call me in a panic, big ones, and say, like, our CRM does everything in one way, and our website does everything in a different way. Web CMS does everything in a different way, and we can't do any logical business reporting. And so this thing of, like, are you paying attention to what you know? And takes me all the way back to the beginning, where I said content marketing is knowledge management. What do you know? Are you managing what you know, taking advantage of it? And then if we marry it up with the conversation we were having about questions, like you said, I'm an SMB, and I know I'm working in this kind of industry. What useful stuff can you tell me? And that's that. You're not going to be able to do that unless you manage your internal knowledge in an effective way. Gina Ballerin, who is spoken at the last 2 Omnichannel X conferences, she uses the term stories as a service, which I love.
Yeah,
it's awesome. You know, have you set up an operation in your brand so that the stories, like, they're just always coming out? You've got data that becomes insights, that becomes narratives, and then those narratives can be expressed, and people can go, I see myself on that. I'm normal, or not normal, or whatever.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, like, what are the lessons that you learned, and you want to know how people will be attracted to your business, is take the lessons you learned, turn them into stories, and then push out those stories, because you know what? You have data that they don't have.
Yeah.
And so like, it's so funny that the value of like, you go into like a meeting with a C-level executive and you say, this is the lessons we learned from the data. That's the exact thing that you should actually, if it's not, you should be pushing into the world, unless you're unless you're selling your internal.
Well, I'll give a really simple example. So we come back to SaaS. You offer your SaaS, and your SaaS has templates, or some starter content or whatever. If you could tell me 70% of our customers use this template, I would see that template in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. If that actually came up when I went to file new, and you could say, and I had like statistics or some way, like even just one little note that I could drill down on if I wanted, that says, when you give me 50 templates, these 5 are the ones that most of the business uses, or can I slice that by industry? Bring that back so that every time I touch the business, you're utilizing that. When I'm on the website, when I'm using the product, when I'm, if it's got a physical product, how can you use that in a way to better surface the right information to me, to guide me on my way? I think that if we can just squeeze it in there, I think that's a really good segue into Web 3.0 and the metaverse.
Yeah. So unpack that for me.
So a lot of people are asking me about these days, because I've been because of how my career went, I've been a futurist for a while, which is kind of easy if you're kind of living with. You go to meetings with like 6 world leading geniuses. It's very, it gets easy to kind of see what's coming. So I was when I'm talking about the metaverse and what's going to be really interesting and exciting about the metaverse is it pushes everything we've been talking about up a level. In the same way that when the web first came out, like even putting your documents out in public where everyone could see them was like what? We're just going to put these pages, which are our precious company pages, which we hand deliver to people. You're just going to put them out where anybody can see them anytime, even our competitors. Like that was mind blowing. And then we had social media where everybody was a publisher and everybody had there was a point where Katy Perry had 30% more followers than CNN. Social media was nuts. It was mind blowing and it changed the planet. And so I think that Web 3.0 and the metaverse is equally huge. And I talk a lot, what I think that we're going to is the post-query world.
Okay.
What we're doing now these days is we're still tapping in, where do I get good sushi in New York? Or how do I choose the right mortgage? Or how do I migrate this server to that application? We're still entering these sentences to try to get our answers back, even if we're speaking them to Alexa or whatever. Mm-hmm. What the metaverse is not just virtual realities, because those are cute and they have lots of cool things you can do in virtual reality, which I don't know if we have time for. But if you think about the metaverse as when the internet comes to you, so that we all have the knowledge superpower all the time. Once we can augment on our watches, on our glasses, then when I'm no longer looking for the history of the Eiffel Tower, I just look at the Eiffel Tower. If I want more information about it, I point. We're moving to full ergonomics. It's just natural to navigate information, just as natural it is to navigate the regular world. For me, that's the promise of the metaverse. And so how did we get on this? You were talking about stories as a service.
We were talking about the Eiffel Tower, and we were talking about
leveraging that data. Tapas. So in a post-query world, you have to be proactively thinking about how am I going to make sure that my stuff shows up when this person is right at the right moment. Right now we have 6 search results on a search engine. Now we're going to be fighting for that. Everybody's fighting for position 0. Everybody's fighting for the thing or the top 3 things when I look at the Eiffel Tower, or when I look at this restaurant, or when I'm looking at a piece of hardware and I want information about how to configure it properly, how do we make sure that we are the ones who the people let in and let surface information to them proactively? And you can only do that if you are really on top of everything we're discussing. Your brand relationship, your data, your ability to leverage it and deliver it on any channel, and so on and so on. So everything we're talking about is all going to get sewn up into these unified, seamless experiences, which will put the ultimate pressure for brands to really take the leap into the next generation.
Well, let me ask you a question then. So does that mean only the bigger companies that have the money to be in the right places at the right time? Because you can't be everywhere at all time, right? Is it going to be the big companies are going to dominate that, or is it going to be the little companies that are hyper niche that know how to be at the right place? Because you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the ones who have deep understanding of the customer.
Sure.
So I think it'll be exactly the same as every other time. So it's been at the extremes. So big companies will be able to just throw money at the problem and pull forward ahead of everybody else. And we know that and this is a whole other podcast, is that the dominance of some of the big companies, because they do have a good handle on their data, that dominance is not going away anytime soon. But every time there's a Web 1.0, Web 2.0, there's an opportunity for disruption. There's an opportunity for companies who really understand the customer so well and just create them a perfect, tailored suit experience. Those companies will be able to make a name for themselves and will be able to disrupt even the bigger companies. Because big companies, as powerful as they are, they tend to move slow. And we have first mover advantage. Every time there's a big paradigm shift, you've got first mover advantage opens up again.
I do think it is pretty funny though, because I will read articles on Metaverse, Web 3.0, and they're almost making it sound like, hey, you know what? Because of NFTs and other things like that, I'm going to be able to be the emperor of my own domain, or whatever that is. In other words, I'm going to have way more control in the Web 3.0 landscape. And I want to believe that, but the architecture of Web 3.0 is still being built by Facebook, Microsoft, and some of the biggest players out there. I don't think that they're going to build the playground and then just let all these independent booths take over and take all the commerce. So you know what I mean? Like I describe it like,
yeah. So
I follow the money, and somehow they're going to get their share.
Exactly. So I think about the metaphor of how many people actually maintain a blog, or how many individuals actually go to the trouble of learning how to make a website. There's always the people when they say like you'll be able to be the master of your domain. Sure, most people don't want to be the master of their domain. They just want to they want to get lunch. They want to get their other job done. Yep. So they are going to rely on brands to fill that gap. Like I don't want to sit and learn. Like there's going to be a tiny little slice of time that I'm actually going to devote to figuring out how to customize and build this stuff myself. But your average person just wants to get their job accomplished, and the brands who can help me do that, those are the ones that I'm going to give my trust to.
I mean, I still think of like the App Store, right? And I try to explain a little bit of what I'm talking about through that lens of, you know what? When you think about all of the apps that are out there, right? And when Apple was smart enough to create an app store, right? Like we just said, you're the I keep saying the emperor of your own domain, but you're the
master.
The master of your own domain. But you know what? At the end, Apple is going to get 20 cents on every transaction that you do. You know what I mean? And so you will be able to have control, but the big guy will have a piece of that. What I do believe, though, is that they are going to, if it's done right, we will have more autonomy to control how we message, how we communicate. We will have control of all of those things that is just very different from the landscape that we know right now. And that's why I think, though, that the speed of this thing, like, I don't think tomorrow you're going to have a metaverse or you're going to have a Web 3.0. The speed of this thing going slow enough is actually our friend. Yeah,
absolutely. If you Google the YouTube videos on metaverse and 3.0, a lot of them are like 5, 6, 7 years old. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is actually the second Web 3.0, because I was around in the structured content community for the first time we tried to launch the term Web 3.0, and that was for linked data and the semantic web, which is still here. It's still thriving, but it's not. It's now been merged with NFTs, blockchain, metaverse, etc., to be Web 3.0.1 or whatever.
Very cool.
I want to kind of layer something on what you were saying about the it'll still be owned by the big guys. Mm-hmm. What I anticipate is that there will be at least a slice that isn't, as opposed to the nearly nothing that there is now. Right now, you're not going to get an app anywhere else, unless, it's incredibly rare. I can think of 2 apps that I didn't download from the Play or the Apple Store. Whereas if we got up to 20%, that would be a whole different world.
Yeah. Yep. Very interesting. So I'm writing, I have a co-writer that helps me write pretty much everything I do. So I have these raw ideas, but I can't formulate sentences. And we had one of the things we were talking about, we're trying to get it submitted to Wired, but we were talking about like the whole Jurassic Park premise of the metaverse and the ethics of marketing in the metaverse. We're just kind of saying like, just because you could doesn't exactly mean that you should. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yes,
you know what I mean?
Also.
That's one of the things that we're trying to say with the metaverse. Like, if you think that the addiction to social media, it is now. Like, I have a daughter; she's 6 years old, and I'm already seeing the traces of her being addicted to her phone. I think the metaverse is going to be so pervasive. The
numbers are already coming out.
Yeah.
The numbers are already coming out. I just saw a study saying that that virtual reality or augmented reality gaming is calculated 44% more addictive than current gaming.
Yeah.
Like it's really you're intimately, and I was talking a lot of theory, but I just got last month the headset and stuff, and I've been spending some time in VR.
Yep.
I close my eyes at night. And my memories will toggle between reality and virtual reality. That never happened to my phone.
Yeah.
That never ever happened to my phone ever. And I did like a lot of phone gaming and stuff. Never. I close my eyes. My mind is like sorting through memories, some of which are virtual, some of which are real. That's so intimate. Yeah. And so the ethics there, that's a really big topic.
Yeah. So when I go to certain countries, and sorry, Todd, if I'm being a rhino here, I'm just taking your Todd, so you're like one of the most interesting people. Is that when I go to certain countries and I have to speak Spanish, which I'm terrible at, but I know enough of it. By like Wednesday of that week, I start dreaming in Spanish. All right. Yeah. People that have dabbled in knowing 2 languages, they sort of know that world, right?
Yeah.
That is what I'm either afraid of, or that is definitely what's coming with the metaverse. It's like
absolutely
the seamlessness of knowing the difference between what's real and what's not. That's the scary reality. And you know what? I think that people are going to want to choose a reality where they're in more control. And the metaverse, I don't know whether this is like a Garden of Eden type thing, but you get to be the god of your own little world there. And why would you want to unplug to go to something where you lose control, that you don't have control, and that's just, frankly, you are not the god of your own world, and that's the scary premise that could happen from this.
We already have that. I'm sorry, I'm also Todd, you want to get in here? I'll let you in 2 seconds. But we already have that, even with the addiction levels that we have with our phones. Like, nothing feels better than leaving your phone at home and walking off for a day out in the wilderness. Like, there's nothing as just wonderful and liberating as that. But there's nothing like just a unique, awful feeling, which the previous generation never felt, which is walking into an airport and going, "Where's my phone?" I'm helpless. Yeah. Like, I know. Not even an airport. Just like I go to work one day, like a whole work day with my phone is just. So like we have superpowers like navigation, memory, time like sense. Like like it used to be a big deal. You book a meeting and you have to book like a whole afternoon. Like, because people would coordinate to get there, and no one would know how long it was going to take to get there if you're in a different city. So, everything, and now we can be so precise because we have these time, space, knowledge, memory superpowers. The second we leave our phone at home, they're gone, and that visceral is just going to be multiplied by 10.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so I have to stop us here because you guys will talk forever. I love it though. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Honestly, Nas, like this conversation went in a totally different place than we thought it was going. So what we'd love to do is, can we schedule like another like 3 to 6 months from now and like just talk about this? Because
Sure.
this is a topic in and of itself. And you two nerds got there faster than I could. So let's get caught up on some of like I need to do some more reading too because I'd like to join the conversation. But let's do that in the next 6 months. But before we go, just tell us real quickly about your conference, and then Chris said that we're going to raffle off some passes as well. So tell us when it is, who's going to speak, what it's about. You got 30 seconds.
Awesome. So Omnichannel X, for 4th year, it's going to be fully online, so you can join from everywhere. You get there's workshops, the sessions, panels of experts. You get access to all the slides and all the recordings for a year after the conference if you join us. And there are some packages where you can even get access to the back library of the past 2 years.
Oh, nice.
The agenda is not finalized yet, but we always have Facebook, Google, Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals, ING
Nice.
Bank, Barclays Bank, Oracle, IBM, Atlassian. So we got all kind of we a lot of pharmaceutical, a lot of finance, a lot of technology, but also like Stanley Black & Decker and Adobe and some of the different kind of companies.
That's great.
So it's the World Health Organization. So there's something there for everybody. It's for the people who want to open your minds up and go, where's it all going? How do I fit all the puzzle pieces together? How do I get the whole picture? And how do I communicate that to my colleagues so we can better collaborate? That's what we're all about.
Fantastic. And you said that was June?
Yeah. June 13 to 16. Tickets are on sale now. Omnichannel X, all one word, no dash, .digital.
Okay.
And you can check all our blog and our podcast as well on there if you want.
Fantastic. And to our listeners and subscribers, we're going to have a link in this podcast when it goes out, so you can be part of the raffle and get one of these awesome golden tickets that Nas has graciously offered you. So thank you, Nas, for your time. Audience, thank you for joining us. You probably thought this was about content. We took you to another world. So you never know what you're going to get when we get 3 smart guys or 2.5 smart guys in the room. So sorry, Chris, for that one. So our audience, subscribe, click that bell, leave a comment, please. We'd love to know what you're thinking. And then once again, on Digital Marketing Masterclass, our goal is to bring the most impressive thought leaders in the marketing industry. And we appreciate, Nas, for your time. I know you're a little late for happy hour, so go enjoy yourself. Your weekend just started. So thank you very much. And we look forward to, we're going to catch up in a couple months and we're going to have a better discussion about 3.0 because I think you two are way off base. But thank you all very much for your time and talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.